In fact, this trial was supposed to happen today on the 4th of September. The reason it's been put back is because they still haven't told me what it is in that hour-long video that breaches contempt of court.
Can I take you back to when you did that thing?
Nothing actually. What it comes out is that that Section 4 is the reporting restriction. So the judge had put a reporting restriction on this case. Now, anyone, again, just go and read the law. It's what I did. I'd previously gone for days of training on contempt of court. I read the law. The law states that the judge has no power to put any reporting restriction on any information that's already in the public domain. Now, everything I said outside court that day was already in the public domain. Me prejudice in the trial. Well, that's not the Section 4 that he sentenced me under. He sentenced me under basically breach and reporting restriction. And to all the people who I read all the things saying I risked the trial, I read all of this. The trial had finished. And bearing in mind...
Did anyone else speak in your hearing? Did any court police? There was a picture circulating on the internet of some people looking down from a brick building. I don't know if that was the judge or court police or a clerk.
So that was the judge and the police that arrested me. So that was the judge. When I was outside court, which I wasn't aware of until I come out, that was the judge watching down as and then the police come down and arrested me.
Did they say anything in court?
No. No, nothing. And then the other thing is, if you read the law, again, I can't believe journalists have not done this. If you read the law specifically states that because contempt of court gives the judges, there's no laws like this in America and other countries. Contempt of court gives the judges so much power to themselves. They can arrest someone, try them, convict them and sentence them. There's no jury. So I'm not going to be found guilty by 12 members of the British public. I'm up before a judge who deems I've done wrong and a judge who deems what sentence he can give me. Now, because of the amount of power that gives a judge, then under the law, the contempt of court law, that judge, under no circumstances whatsoever, that's the wording of it, can put any restrictions or reporting restrictions on the public being told what has happened if he sentenced someone under contempt of court.
And that's what happened, though.
He instantly said that there'll be reporting restrictions. No one is allowed to know what's happened.
Were there reporters in that courtroom? I understand there was someone from the Leeds local newspaper there.
There was, yes. None of them commented. None of them made any comment. None of them said a word, which is why I was sent to prison. And then I started reading that because of some of these newspapers then challenged that reporting restriction a week later. Right. What my point is entirely on this reporting restriction. So people are saying that it wasn't I risked giving someone a fair trial. These reporting restrictions have been put on every Muslim grooming gang trial case. Now, if they wasn't put in place, then every day the British public would be fed the news stories of what these men are doing to these girls. For example, in some cases, they took a 12-year-old girl with a claw hammer. When they got her pregnant, they stuck the claw hammer up her and they killed the kid. Yeah? They killed the baby. In other circumstances, they got a hot iron rod and they stamped a young 11-year-old girl on her bum. These sort of sadistic, racially motivated and religiously motivated crimes, the comments, all of the stuff from this case would be played out each day. By putting a reporting restriction on the case, which is what they do, you'll have a year's worth of trials. There's another trial starting tomorrow with another 31 people. There's trials going on across this country every week. But they put these restrictions. So then what happens is no one can talk. Yeah? No one can talk about what's happening in court. And they say it's so that the other people can have a fair trial. I don't understand what difference it makes. Now my point is these laws, I'd say, are anti-freedom laws. They're laws preventing 60 million people in this country reading and knowing what's happening each day. Their job should be to prevent the jury, the 12 members of the British public. If you need to prevent people hearing and understanding things, it's them. When you become a member of the jury, you're told, I've seen it in court many times, you're not allowed to go on the internet, you're not allowed to research this, you're criminally not allowed to look at videos, you're not allowed to look at anything to do with this trial, or you go to jail. Yeah? So they're not allowed to. So why are these conditions put on that then prevent daily news stories where we'd be hearing the stories? Basically, they'll lift the reporting restriction at the end of the trial and you'll get one day's news. One day's news about the horrific torture of hundreds of young children, the horrific, the circumstances, the reasons, the comments from the men, the perpetrators doing it, all of these things then are put under a restriction from the public hearing. With recent, and it's not just this. I see that recently in London, we had a case of terrorism where the public have not been allowed to know at all, which is in national security, what the men were doing, what crime they were, what they were planning to do to members of the British public. Now, so that I've seen so many things like this, where I'd say are secret courts in Britain, and I've seen that in the Muslim grooming gangs or the rape jihad trials that are going on across this country, these same tactics, and I'm yet to ask. I've asked multiple lawyers, tell me standing outside trial, I made sure to say those men are innocent until proven guilty. I made sure to remain calm and respectful. I simply asked them how they felt about their verdict. The public watch as, whether it be Rolf Harris, whether it be other groups, whenever anyone else walks into court, every time I walk into court, I'm bombarded with cameras and questions and comments, every time. But then for some reason, for these Muslim grooming gang trials, no one's allowed to speak.
I was actually watching your Facebook live stream that day, May 25th, from Canada.
Yeah.
And I remember when you read the names of some of the accused men. And I think you were reading them from a BBC website, is that correct?
I read them from a BBC website. There's lots of... So everything... I just read out...
So did you tell that to the judge? Because how could you reading something off a BBC website that was being published at the same time, how could that be contempt of court?
This is the problem. The judge hasn't told us what was contempt of court. So he sentenced me to prison without needing to tell anyone.
Did you go into the trial at all? Did you go and sit in and listen to the trial?
No. When I got to court that morning, this is the other thing that if you read the guidelines for the court and for judges, when they put reporting restrictions on a case, they must be visible on the door of the court and they must be visible on the screen. I went into court that morning. I questioned about reporting restrictions that morning. Before,
who did you ask?
I asked the man at reception. He said he didn't know. I then looked on the screen, which had the defendants' names, and there's nothing on the screen of a reporting restriction. Okay, I have a photograph of this. Okay, then when he put the report, when he sentenced me, then and only then, they changed the screen.
The reason I asked if you sat in the court is if you didn't sit in the court, you couldn't say anything that was going on in the court. You were just outside giving general opinions and reading from the BBC. Did you... I don't recall you saying anything that would say...
I made sure that I didn't say anything that wasn't in the public domain. Every bit of information I gave was on websites. Now, if the reporting restriction that the police want to put in, then they need to go contact the BBC, all the national newspapers. They need to go contact anyone, because any member of the jury, everything I said, any member of the jury could have sat on their computer and read. But the judge has no power to put reporting restrictions on any information. That's the law, which again, I had all these experts and these secret barristers and these journalists and politicians and all of them sending out a generic response that I pleaded guilty. That's why I'm in prison. And I deserve to, because I risked prejudice in a trial that had already finished. The jurors were there to give their verdict, to give the result of their verdict.
I've seen Mohan Singh, a friend of yours, did a video in front of that same courthouse on another day saying very similar things. He read the names also. I've seen other British media have a flurry of interest in court cases, really not much different than yours on that day. Did the judge refer to any precedent? Did he say anything about you and your history? Was there anything in that hearing that day that would explain why he had such a fast trial and a heavy sentence, given how other media and other citizen journalists are treated? No,
what else transpires is that there's, in the transcripts, because that's what my solicitors were waiting for, which anyone can go get, again, journalists, you can go get them. Get the transcripts from the court case. You'll see that although he sentenced me, and he sentenced me as well for having a 3-month suspended sentence, there was no mention of the 3-month suspended sentence. He done no research or mention in the court at all of finding out that I was on a 3-month suspended sentence. He knew without me mentioning it in the court. No one mentioned it in the court. He knew, and I'd say they were already, well, I know they were aware by comments that were made to me by police officers, that the police officer in charge of the grooming trial who come to see me after I was sentenced, they knew I was going to be at that courtroom that morning.
Who's they? You saying the judge knew?
No, I can't say the judge knew. The police were aware.
The court police?
Yeah.
So how?
Because the police seized my phone. So on top of this, what I was arrested for was breach of the peace, and then they mentioned incitement. That's what they mentioned to me. Now, even after I was sent to prison for 13 months, a lead officer from South Yorkshire Police come and saw me in my cell and said, "Give us the password for your phone." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "We're seizing your phone." I said, "What for?" He goes, they were looking at other crimes of incitement. It's exactly
did you give him the password?
No, I didn't know.
Do you have your phone back yet?
No, I don't know. No, they still have my phone. And
did he have a warrant for your phone?
No, this is what I said. I've been sentenced under contempt of court. Under what grounds? And I kept asking him this. Under what grounds? Now, anyone who doesn't know the history, this is South Yorkshire Police. South Yorkshire Police who illegally arrested me and raided my mum's and my house. This is all factual as well. They've accepted. They sent their police officers on training courses in 2010 actually. In 2010, I was due to speak in South Yorkshire again about grooming and about the rape of young girls. This was before it was public knowledge, before everyone knew everything about these cases, before everyone had accepted and admitted that the government and the police had conspired with religious leaders to allow this rape to happen. Before that was all public knowledge, before the Rotherham report, before all these things. South Yorkshire Police, I was due to be talking about it. What South Yorkshire Police did is they sent 30 police officers. I was arrested at the airport. They then raided my mum's and raided my house. They then gave me bail conditions not to hold protests. And the bail date they gave me was to prevent me talking. So I have a long history with this same police force who have done anything they can to attempt to prevent me talking about these issues.
So he came... and he came right to your cell, did he?
They took me out of my cell to see this police officer.
Were you required to meet him, or did you just... No.
No, they said... And they took me into him, and he was the lead police officer.
How long was that meeting?
5 minutes.
Yeah.
I just said, "I'm on my way to prison."
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from me?
Let me get back to something you said earlier about... You mentioned that a year ago, I remember when you were with the Rebel, there was a contempt of court case in Canterbury,
yeah.
And there was a 3-month suspended sentence there. Yeah. I just want to clarify, are you saying that was never mentioned in the Leeds court?
No, never mentioned.
But
so basically, when I spoke to my lawyers, when I spoke to my solicitors, they said on the transcripts there's no mention of your 3-month contempt. So how's he sentenced you on a 3-month contempt if there's no mention of it?
Sounds like maybe there was some information, some reviewing of information
that wasn't said in court, outside of court, which it shouldn't have been. I don't know. I wasn't aware it shouldn't have been, but from what I understand, it shouldn't have been. Whilst we're on the Canterbury court case, because I see so many people saying it's the second time he done it, he's not learned his lesson. For my previous contempt of court, there was a young girl who was lost, and she went into a kebab shop and she asked for directions. She was a child. She was taken to a flat upstairs by 5 men and raped in every hole she has. Okay? Now, they found their DNA. So these men, one of the men fled to Afghanistan, I believe that's where he's from, or Italy, but he was from Afghanistan. They found their DNA. So all 5 men's DNA were at the scene, on the victim, everywhere. Okay? Because when she came out, she was distraught. These men were given bail. Now, I was informed of this. I went down to their takeaway. It was called... it was called 777. Yeah, this takeaway, this kebab shop where they raped the victim. I then went. They just changed the name, and then I heard that they're still running this shop. So I went and looked at the shop. They locked the doors. They shut the doors. They were still running the shop. I checked the ownership name on the system to see who owns the new company name. It's the same man, the man who's up for raping a child. I then went and spoke with the business over the road, and I spoke to customers of the business over the road saying, "Have you seen any young girls in that shop?" And they said, "Yes, there was some young schoolgirls in there yesterday. Or school-aged children in there yesterday." So then So in my eyes, okay, and in fact in the whole British public's eyes, these men should never have been given bail. Yeah, they should. So I know that the judge will not like me for saying this, but the judge left the British public and our daughters and our sisters for too long, and they've been at risk. Left them at risk again. These men were on bail. These men are all now serving 20 years in prison for the rape, but at the time they weren't. These men were freely still mixing with young children. Their business was still running. They were still using the same premises. And I went down there because I wanted to make a video, which I said at the time, that I want the public and I want everyone in that area to know who these men are and what they're alleged to have done. Now, at that time, I wasn't sure of all the laws of contempt of court. And I went there from my straight from my full heart that I was angry, I was frustrated, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw that these men were still running a business. If there was a chance that they were going to get not guilty, for example, if they didn't have all of their DNA on the young child, right, but they did have their DNA. So in my mind, I've been remanded. People who will be sitting watching this who get remanded into prison, they don't get bail. Why have these men been given bail? And in fact, it's been proven that they were all guilty at the time. But the judge took me before. As soon as I went outside the court, the judge let them use the back exit because she didn't want me. She didn't want them to be at risk from me. The 5 men who have gang raped a child would be at risk from me putting a camera in their face.
This was the Canterbury.
This was at Canterbury. This is when I was working. Yeah. This is when I was working with you as well. Yeah. And then the police raided my house the next morning at 4:30 in the morning, and I was judged before I was put before the judge. And the only reason I can see is that she knows that she failed in her duty to protect the British public. She failed by giving them bail, so she took me before her court and she sentenced me. And even when I watch that video now, there were things that I said wrong on that video.
But I remember that when you were with the Rebel, we had a session at a senior law firm.
Afterwards, yeah.
Kingsley Napley, and we brought in a lot of lawyers and we went over contempt of court and other things that you as a citizen journalist should be careful of. And so when I watched you in Leeds, I was nervous. I'll admit it, I was nervous, but I thought, okay, he's careful. He's not stepping on the court premises. He's carefully saying accused rapist or alleged rapist. He's not saying they're guilty.
In the training day we spent, in the training days we spent to understand contempt of court, which I didn't understand, is you're not allowed to stand on court. I didn't understand at Canterbury. You're not allowed to stand on the court property.
And so you didn't.
That's contempt of court.
You didn't in Leeds.
I didn't in Leeds. I actually asked the police officer, where's the land lie, and he agreed. So I didn't in Leeds. I also, every time you speak of an offence, you have to speak of an alleged offence. Yeah. No matter how much evidence there is, I knew those men were guilty as soon as I knew they did, but you have to say alleged offence.
And you checked that box too. I thought you've been very careful.
I was very careful.
So what exactly? So you still don't know what they put you away for because the judge never said.
No, the judge to
this day, that you don't know what you've said wrong.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm about to stand a trial again in a number of weeks. Still today, we have not been told what it is. So I expect they'll throw it on us a week before, maybe. They'll throw, here's what we're saying, breached the reporting restriction. And bearing in mind, anyone can research this. Go look up Rod Liddell's case. He breached the Stephen Lawrence murder trial. The murder trial nearly collapsed. The Spectator run the story. Now, because they deleted it quickly, okay, and because they removed it quickly, he was given a few £1,000 fine. But bearing in mind that this is what their advice is. Their advice is that they don't seem, I always say this word wrong, draconian, so that the government don't come across as draconian. They shouldn't be imprisoning journalists. I've even seen right now, there's a massive, contempt of law has been going for 70 years. Never ever has any journalist ever been put in prison.
It was shocking. I want to ask you one last thing about that court hearing, because you say it was 7 minutes. That's incredible to me, given that your video itself was more than an hour. You didn't even review the evidence.
Hadn't watched the video. It would have been impossible. It would have been impossible for the judge to have watched the video.
It takes an hour to watch the video.
And if it had watched the full video, it'd have seen all the steps and all the reasonable things I made and said, the different interactions I had with the public. I made sure that I stayed within the law on what I'd been taught was within the law.
Now, contempt of court is not a crime. There's no guilty mind. It's a strict liability offence. Either you did it or you didn't, even if you didn't mean to. And you've already said in no way would you want to derail a trial, and you said that you would have taken the video down if it were to put a trial at risk. So there's clearly no guilty mind. You obviously did not mean to disrupt the trial. Am I right?
Of course. Well, my understand is that basically, so reporting restrictions can be put on, and there's no way of anyone knowing where what reporting restrictions are on. And the government were advised in 2014, again, anyone who reads up on this can find this, they were advised that they must have a national website. And that national website must inform journalists so that if for example, I know there's a case starting tomorrow. Yeah, it's at Kirklees Magistrates Court. It's 31 men are going to appear for the first time. 31 Muslim men are going to appear for the first time for another huge gang rape, again in the same city as the previous 30 that I was reporting on, in that same city. Now, there's no website, there's no way of checking whether there's restrictions. There's no way of knowing. Yeah. Now, the government were advised to set up a national website. They haven't done that. I hope that after this, they set up a law which would tell the government and the courts that they have to make it visible for journalists to understand what they can and can't say.
When you were convicted,
the attempts to make me the most hated man in Britain have completely failed. And I was worried. I was very worried. I've been very worried about what they're going to do next. I'm very worried now about what they're going to do next, because they're in. And when I say they, I mean the government. Like, even well, I was sent to prison and I got 13 months, and my previous prison sentences, like in 2012. I received a 10-month prison sentence, and it was for illegally entering the United States of America. Now, again, everything I've done through my activism, if it's morally right, if I believe I'm morally right, I believe boundaries need to be pushed. I believe that if the moral argument, and it's a moral cause we're fighting, I knew when I went to America, I knew what I was doing was legally wrong. But I felt that I had such an important message to give America, to give the American public, a warning to America. I wish that someone would have come to this country 30 years ago, would have told them this is what's going to happen. I'm telling you because I've lived through it. I've watched my town. I've watched the left align themselves with the Islamist groups. I've watched them join in order for the vote bank of politics. I've watched the decay of freedom. I've watched all of this growing up in Luton. So I felt when I went to America, that was an important message to give. Now, I legally entered America. I looked at previous people who had used illegal documentation. For example, Abu Qatada come into Britain on a false passport. He was not put in prison. Okay, I spent 10 months. I was put in British prison. America did not prosecute me. The British authorities prosecuted me. I had not actually broke a law in Britain because the crime I committed was in America, but they remanded me. I was remanded instantly. So I was held on remand for 3 months before I got before a judge. And I was put on solitary confinement. I spent, I think, 22 weeks on solitary confinement. The legalities around that. Anything over 28 days is detrimental to your mental health to be isolated on your own. Now, I was moved from Wandsworth, not far from here, prison here, then to Bedford prison, then to Wood Hill prison, then back to Wandsworth prison, then to Wayland prison. And the whole entire time I saw no one at all on that entire prison sentence. I did not come out of my cell. Now, when I come out of my cell, and I never spoke about this publicly, and the reasons for it, when I come out, I struggled big time. I come out after 5 months of sitting on solitary confinement, and I come out just straight back into society, and I struggled. I struggled to cope a lot, and I went to doctors, and I was diagnosed with having a post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the reason why I never spoke about it publicly was because it's embarrassing. Post-traumatic stress disorder is something that men who fight wars get. I'm locked in a room. There can be no comparison in what those men are suffering for me to publicly try and talk about that.
Well, the difference is this is done to you by the British prison system on purpose.
On purpose, undoubtedly, because they're not allowed to do it. They're not allowed to do. But anyway, this was for illegally entering. I spent 2 days in New York. I gave a speech where I wanted to warn America, and I spent 5 months on solitary confinement. Now, I come out of prison, and I went to prison in 2014 for a separate offence, which was for a mortgage fraud, a supposed mortgage fraud. Which again, I'll get into this in a little while. But when I went in that prison sentence, I was locked in a room and was beaten. Locked in a room with Muslim prisoners, and I was beaten. I've got all new teeth. All my teeth are new because my teeth were smashed to pieces. But I wasn't put on solitary confinement. Yeah. So I was then moved. I was put into a jihadi jail in England, where I lasted 5 minutes before I was violently attacked and battered, and then I was transported black and blue to another prison. But the next prison I was transported to has a very low Muslim demographic. I spent the 6 months of my prison sentence as a role model prisoner with Muslim prisoners, but I was no risk to them. But on my health records, which the prison system have, which the government have, they know the long-term struggles I had after solitary confinement. Now, this prison sentence, I landed in HMP Hull. Now, I was worried when I went to prison because I was in Leeds.
You were suddenly and without explanation moved. Is that correct?
So, as I say, my family saw me on the Sunday.
Yeah.
They went away from the meeting happy because I told them, I'm fine here.
And you saw your kids for the first time then too?
Yeah, because when I say I'm fine here, prison staff were the ones who locked me previously in a sentence in a room and allowed me to be violently beaten. Right. Now, in Hull, my mum wrote a letter every single day to the prisons minister, every single day, detailing what she feared they were doing to me. Yeah, she feared would be allowed to happen to me. Actually, she didn't whilst I was in Hull. It was when I got to Onley. But when I saw my family, I made them aware. Look, I'm fine. Yeah, I made sure the word went out that I'm okay in Hull. Yeah, I'm fine here. I've got 6 months to serve in prison.
So it was a 13-month sentence, but you thought you'd be out in 6?
I thought I'd do 6.5 months to serve, and I relatively thought, look, I'm going to have my appeal process. I'm seeing my QC on Friday. Hull at the minute, everything. No one knew I was in Hull really. Like no one saw me. In fact, no one saw me. I was not visible. When I went and sat in the garden, no prisoners could see the garden. I didn't see other prisoners really. So it was when I had my visit, it was on the unit, the hospital unit. Now, my QC is due to see me and my solicitor on the Friday, and on the Monday, the day after my visit, they just come in at first thing in the morning and said, "Get your stuff packed, you're going."
Even after the Court of Appeal quashed the original sentence and just devastated it in 5 ways.
They didn't just sit on the... You see, now I was worried. When I was in prison, I didn't believe. My solicitor's telling me, they've got to let you out. Yeah? And I'm saying, they're not going to let me out. Right? I know they're not going to let me out. So, briefly, in 2014, my mortgage fraud trial, when I got myself together recently, I spent £16,000 with a QC to go through my mortgage fraud trial. Now, what they found, just like this case, yeah, was that it was all unlawful. Okay. Now, we went to the Court of Appeal, the same Court of Appeal that let me free. 6 months prior, we went to the Court of Appeal, where they heard the case, where it was put to the court. Now, the Court of Appeal judge and the prosecution, all three, all of them, read the law and said, yeah, this is all unlawful. Yeah. Now, the Court of Appeal judge said that it wasn't enough of a miscarriage of justice enough for him to grant of appeal because we were out of time of appeal. Yeah? It wasn't. Now, this was a case that I was sentenced to 18 months in prison and I had to give the police £125,000. At a time when they got me in a position I had to give them £125,000, I was offered deals by secretive units within called the Met Intelligence Bureau within Scotland Yard. The deal would be that I would work for them in Uniting the Right. Yeah? I would be an undercover agent for the security services. and then they wouldn't have to pay the 125 grand. Now, what it turns out when my QC went through the case was I never had to pay the 125 because it was all unlawful anyway. Now, the judge agreed in the Court of Appeal. I've got it in black and white writing that it was all unlawful, but he didn't give the justification. So I haven't had the money returned to me, which I should have, and he didn't rule it unlawful because he didn't, for him to give an appeal, because we're out of time of appeal, the only guideline is it has to be a huge miscarriage of justice. He doesn't think that 4.5 years' time you have a yearly wage and a fine by the police just to put you in a position to have you try and work for them is enough. Now, so bearing in mind, I knew what had gone on in the previous Court of Appeal. I had no confidence that this Court of Appeal judge would do what was right. And in fact, I still believe that they would have done everything to try and find a way not to do it, which is why I wasn't instantly freed when it was heard. It's why I spent another 2 weeks in solitary confinement. And not just 2 weeks, they had until the 1st of August. Yeah? What date did the appeal result come? On the 1st of August. They maximised the amount of time I would still be held under those conditions. Now, I'm sitting here now, I'm still having to seek medical treatment. I face another court trial now on the 27th of this month.
For the exact same matter in Leeds.
The exact same matter in Leeds.
The Court of Appeal didn't have to order that.
The Court of Appeal didn't have to order it. And in fact, when they did order it, I never thought they'd go through with it because I thought this was just to save a bit of face. Because obviously it's been proven of what they've done. The whole world's watching. Now the headlines aren't Tommy Robinson freed and quashed, conviction quashed. The headlines are Tommy Robinson to be retried. I thought, I get it. They're saving a bit of face. Now what it then turns out is this has not been brought. This case against me has not been brought by the Crown Prosecution Service, which is the normal procedure for crimes in Britain. If there's a court case, the CPS are the people. They're an independent organisation. Yeah? They're the people that say, OK, there's enough evidence. They're independent from the police because they have to look at the police's evidence. They have to act independently and say, OK, there's enough here to warrant it. Let's try him. Yeah? This has come. The CPS have actually said, we want nothing to do with this. This is the Attorney General, the government. This is the government who are ordering a retrial.
We went through 7 law firms before we found someone who would represent you in Canterbury.
And it's because they're scared.
7 law firms. We're almost out of time, Tommy. I want to ask you about 2 positive things. When you were in prison, I didn't speak with you, but I spoke with your wife occasionally and other family members, and they would pass on news to me. And your wife said to me, and I took it seriously, that 2 things buoyed your spirits. And I'm asking on behalf of our viewers who support you, your wife said the 2 things that gave you encouragement were the letters you received via email and knowing that there were supporters around the world who were rallying in London and cities around the world and covering your legal fees for the crowdfunding. Why don't you tell me about both of those? Because I saw that picture of you coming out of prison with 6 big duffel bags. I thought, what's in the duffel bags? You told me those were...
They're all letters.
Letters?
Letters and cards from every single place.
Why don't you tell me about those? Because you're in prison in a box.
So my concern through...
everywhere, Trafalgar Square, Buckingham Palace, and we support you. We'll be there on the 27th. We want you to stay safe, but we also want you to fight. So
I'm grateful as well. I'm grateful to you, Ezra, for stepping in as well.
I'm on behalf of our thousands of supporters of you.
And to every single person, any person. I haven't made another video since I come home. This is the first one, so I want people to understand just how much the support meant and the feeling of knowing that I have that support. I'm actually, the week after next, if you're one of the people that wrote to me, I'm going to be door stopping. I kept my letters. I went through my letters and I put that to that side, that to that side. Story, news, story, follow up. So I need to go through them all, but I want to... I can't knock at every single person's house. Yeah?
That'll be exciting. People get home, visit from Tommy.
But I want to knock to bring flowers and chocolates to some of the people and the women, and I want people to make sure they know how much their support meant.
Tommy, thanks for spending time with us.
Thanks, Ezra. Cheers.
That's my feature interview with Tommy Robinson, the last lion of the United Kingdom. What he told us was heartbreaking, enraging, inspiring, desperate, but a little bit hopeful too. Tommy has to go back to court. The Attorney General is insisting on a retrial for contempt of court for that same incident back in Leeds in May. They actually want to convict him again, maybe to throw him back in prison again. Just yesterday, I received a new invoice from Tommy's law firm, Carson Kay. They're a good firm who won at the Court of Appeal, but now they have to prepare for his second trial. It will cost tens of thousands of pounds, and I'm sorry to ask you again, but if you are at all moved by Tommy's case, please help us by going to savetommy.com. Any surplus after the lawyers are paid will go to Tommy's family to help take care of them. Thank you. You saw how grateful Tommy is for your support. That's it for now from us at The Rebel. We'll be there at his next trial in London, and we'll keep telling the truth about Tommy as long as the mainstream media keeps lying about him. Goodbye, and thanks for your support.